Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, February 18th, 2016, getting through the month. And it's also Joe Stack Day. It was on this day some years ago that Joe Stack flew his aircraft into the offices of the Internal Revenue Service in Austin, Texas, over a dispute. And sadly, after people had already died, it was discovered that, in point of fact, the IRS had made a mistake and wrongfully attached his wealth. So a little bit of anger management issues there. Phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Tom is in our control room, ready to answer the phone. Tomorrow in our third hour, the Lady Claire will be our guest for the show. I'm going to start our talking points today in the war zones because it is alarming how close we are to a major escalation in these wars, and it's totally being ignored by the American corporate media. They're all about the candidates and the campaign and, you know, the dog show and all the rest of that stuff and, you know, what the Pope said about Trump. And they're pointedly not covering this situation. It is dangerously close to spinning out of control. Now, as you know, earlier in the week, there was this massive explosion in Ankara, 28 people dead, a lot more injured, has all the hallmarks of a false flag attack, whether it's Gleiwitz or the Reichstag fire or 9/11 or the rest of it. And sure enough, even though security services were saying it appeared to be ISIS, the Turkish government, Erdogan, is out there saying, it was definitely the Kurds, it was definitely the Kurds. And today they're ramping up the rhetoric by saying the Kurds did it, but this was all done on the orders of Assad's government. You know, and the Russians. The Russians are to blame as well. And Iran was in there too. And Lebanon and Australia and everybody and it's obvious Erdogan cooked this up to make it look like he's the victim so he can try and get NATO in on his side. Story coming out of Pravda. Turkey plans another major provocation to invade Syria. Everybody understands what's going on and who the aggressor really is. There is no question. Now, the Kurds are issuing a warning to Turkey that if Turkey invades the Kurdish part of Syria, or any part of Syria, they are risking outright war with Russia. And everyone's playing brinksmanship. They're all seeing how close they can get to the edge and still not tumble off. We hope that nobody's going to make a mistake, but we're seeing this very alarming report that Russia has sent a message to Turkey saying that if Turkey attacks Russian forces in Syria, Russia does not rule out the use of tactical nuclear weapons to protect their forces. They're not saying on which side of the Syria-Turkey border they're talking about, but this is right up to the edge of mushroom clouds sprouting all over the place. It's just amazing here. Reasonable question coming out of Zero Hedge: how far will the U.S. go if Turkey invades Syria? Is the United States government really ready for an outright military confrontation with Russia? Now, so far, the messages coming out of D.C. is, let's see if we can calm this down. But that's part of the whole moderate rebel bluff all along, of using Saudi Arabia as a proxy in Syria and Yemen, and the U.S. gets to stand back and say, well, we're not causing all this trouble, really. We don't know what the real policy coming out of Washington, D.C. is. We certainly can't trust anything that they're saying, can't take it at face value. Article coming out of Russia today, Turkey's gamble, pointing out how people, these rulers are taking major chances, trying to get up to that cliff, play chicken, whatever metaphor you want to use here. And they're asking, with all of this chaos between Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Turkey, literally on the edge of igniting a war between the great powers, can Washington, D.C. manage its erratic anti-Assad coalition, meaning mostly Erdogan, And my reply to that is they haven't managed it so far. Erdogan's turned into an absolute wild card. Remember what I used to say about our future is in the hands of whichever world leader is the least mentally stable? There are actually articles starting to surface in the Turkish media, and these reporters are probably going to get thrown in jail, but apparently there are some doctors who are saying they're concerned that Erdogan may have in fact slipped a gear. He's certainly acting like it. Another article out of Russia Today. Terror in Turkey. Is Erdogan playing Washington? I'm not the only one who suspects this was a false flag. Now, the Syrian army operating in Aleppo has found yet more proof that Turkey is assisting ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They found more equipment, medical packages, drugs, more proof of Ankara's logistics support, and even more embarrassingly, they found a photo of outside the ISIS camp in Latakia. And there's a flagpole there, and the black flag of ISIS is on top, and directly underneath it flies the flag of Turkey. A little bit of an embarrassment, but as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. The Syrian army is also seizing weapons provided by Israel, apparently landmines, cargo of ammunition. This is over in Sweden. Everybody's in there playing, as long as we're not the ones having to die. Sure, take all the guns, take all the ammunition. Now, as you know, Saudi Arabia is a major part of Erdogan's plan to launch a ground invasion into Syria. Saudi Arabia's leadership is all gung-ho for it, but we're starting to see that Saudi Arabia's career military officers aren't all that hot to do it. Apparently, 10 senior Saudi generals have signed a letter saying that if the Arab monarchy of Saudi Arabia sends forces into Syria, considering their poor performance in Yemen, they're probably going to lose. And they don't want to be on the losing side. Better to just stay at home and, look with dignity and everything. But we've seen how Saudi Arabia has been unable to accomplish what's going on, in Yemen. And they're fighting mostly farmers who are, yes, now very angry and fighting to protect their homes, fighting to put a government of their own people into power, fighting to kick out the U.S. puppet rulers. And that hasn't been going on so well. Now, you go into Syria, you're going up against a fully professional, trained military. They're battle-hardened. They have been fighting war for 4 years. These people are not going to mess around. And so you have all these generals in Saudi Arabia saying, look, this isn't a good idea. Let's sit this one out. Now, if the Saudi monarchy starts replacing all their generals, it means the invasion is on, and because these experienced top commanders are no longer in charge, it actually makes it less likely that Saudi Arabia can accomplish anything. So it's a very, very dangerous, delicate situation. Now, Hillary is out there campaigning about how wonderful a ceasefire in Syria would be and everything, but the reality is that as Secretary of State, she was overseeing a lot of this bloodbath. I mean, Hillary Clinton loves war as long as somebody else is paying for it and somebody else's kids are dying in it. She thinks war is just hunky-dory. And if you look at her track record, Secretary of State, she is not interested in peaceful resolution of any conflict. It's Hillary's way or the highway, usually enforced by very loud explosions from very expensive toys. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Oh, hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the international incidents going on here. Ukraine has actually issued a demand officially to Russia to give Crimea back to them. How dare you take Crimea? We demand the return of our Crimea. Now, of course, we all know what actually happened. The U.S. sponsored a coup d'etat to kick out the government of Ukraine because they wanted to merge with Russia rather than the European Union. So Poroshenko was put on in. And Crimea said, we're not going to have anything to do with a government that was not of our choosing. And Crimea held a referendum, and they voted to secede from Ukraine, which they have the right to do under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Self-determination is recognized as a right by all member nations of the United Nations. So Crimea breaks off and goes its own way. Poroshenko's throwing a tantrum. And Crimea holds another referendum. Do we want to merge with the Russian republics? Overwhelming landslide? Yes. So Crimea says to Russia, may we join you? Russia says, sure. That's what happened. The propaganda in the West, especially coming out of Kiev, continues to be that Russia invaded and conquered and stole Crimea and they must give it back to us. So I'm not expecting to get much of a response from Moscow, aside from some mild chuckling. And, but again, we're seeing all of these actions, rhetoric. They're desperate to start a real bloody war before the economy implodes. Because when the economy implodes, if they don't have somebody to blame it on, we, the people of every single nation on earth, are going to point the finger of blame where it richly deserves to go. Private central banking and the governments that sold us into the slavery of that system. I'm going along on tar and feathers, ropes and rails. Now, President Obama has made a pledge to defend South Korea against North Korea's aggressions, which, let's be honest, we're seeing North Korea launch satellites, which a lot of countries do, and they seem to be making preparations to defend their country, which is a very wise and prudent thing to do. But again, always we're the good guys. We stand for sweetness and light, and those other people, they stand for darkness and evil and badness. And to back up his pledge to defend South Korea, Obama has sent 4 F-22 Raptor jets to fly over South Korea in a show of force. Ooh, 4 planes, big show. I wonder if they fixed the problem with the pilots not being able to breathe above a certain altitude yet. All right. Now, interesting little story. This is coming out of the Middle East Monitor. Benjamin Netanyahu has approached Germany to act as a mediator in negotiations to return the bodies of Israeli soldiers who were in Gaza. And the reason they're going through Germany and following this circuitous route is because back when Netanyahu was dropping white-hot flaming death on children and old men and women in Gaza, he kept insisting no Israeli soldiers were captured or killed inside Gaza. And apparently he was lying, big shock there, and now he wants to get the bodies back here. Over in Manhattan, there's this Jewish gentleman is under arrest right now. Apparently he was out there painting swastikas on doors and making phony hate calls. And it's a reminder that a lot of these so-called hate crimes that garner the headlines, they're all hoaxes. They're all fakes. Oh, feel sorry for me. Feel sorry for me. Give me money. Give me this. Oh, look, there's a swastika on my car. Remember that professor out of Claremont College? Her big thing was racism and intolerance. And, oh, my goodness, there's swastikas on my car. Another student over at Georgetown University, oh, somebody's painting swastikas on my door in the middle of the night. They put up a security camera, didn't tell her, found out she was painting them on her own door. Oh, feel sorry for me. You know, I get really kind of tired about all this, I'm a bigger victim than you are nonsense, because I grew up in an America where we were not victims. We had just been on the winning side of World War II. We were even trying to pretend we had single-handedly won it. Big lie. Nobody was a victim. Nobody wanted to be seen as weak. Go ahead, call me a bad name. It won't affect me at all. And today, what a bunch of thin-skinned, weak, knock-kneed people we have been turned into by political correctness. Oh, I've heard a bad word. I have to do my little program dance of shock and dismay. Oh, I heard a bad word. We're not very impressive to the rest of the world when we act like that. We aren't. All right, over in Great Britain, the furor over the Brexit is continuing to escalate. It is now scheduled that the referendum will take place on June 23rd. And Cameron is dead set that he will enslave the people of Britain to the European Central Bank, and the people of Great Britain are dead set, no, you will not. And David, little reminder, there are more of them than there are of you. And I've been to the Tower of London, and that big wood block is still there. You might want to be very cautious about trying to enslave the people of your nation to bankers. Because now we know that's what's going on. That's what the Federal Reserve was all about. Selling the people of the United States back into the slavery of the same predatory banking system we fought the revolution to be free of. That entire Congress and President ought to be brought up on treason charges if they were not already comfortably dead after their lifetimes of comfort and wealth and privilege and power. Now, over in France, I love this story. There's a French restaurateur, and he's been trying to get the banks to fund an expansion of his restaurant. And it's a very successful restaurant. And for some reason, the banks aren't interested. They're more interested in, funding weapons development because there's a war coming, and war is the big moneymaker. So the restaurant now has a new policy. Dogs are allowed into the restaurant, but no bankers allowed. You have to go out back to the pig pen and get your meal there. And that may shock a lot of people, but it's actually very common all over Europe. You're allowed to take your dogs into the restaurant with you. I mean, most dogs are cleaner than most humans anyway. But I remember when I was in Germany, it was fun. And yes, the dogs are working the tables and going around and begging from the tourists and everything, but that was fun. It was great. I loved it. Absolutely. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're going to talk about we're going to talk briefly about Supreme Court Justice Scalia and what's going on with that. At this point, you need to remember, politics is perception. And the perception overwhelmingly is foul play. And everything they're trying to do is just making it worse. Now we have had John Poindexter come on out and clarify his original description of Scalia lying there with a pillow over his head. Now he's saying, no, actually the pillow was up against the headboard. That's his clarification. Actually, it's a total change. Now, the Justice of the Peace, Cinderella Guevara, has gone back and revised her paperwork saying no autopsy necessary, removed heart attack, and just put the more generic natural causes. It's like after several hard winters, they stop using global warming and they say climate change. And they think nobody's going to notice. But as of right now, the assassination of Judge Scalia has the magic pillow theory, zigzagging and moving all over the place to explain the contradictory statements. Everybody's using this for their own particular agenda, and I got to tell you, Glenn Beck has hit a new degree of low. He's out there saying God allowed Scalia to die in order to highlight the importance of electing Ted Cruz. That's it. God knocked off a Supreme Court judge to remind us that we've got to elect Ted Cruz. I don't even get the connection. And somebody needs to whack Glenn Beck upside of the head and say, hey, Ted Cruz cannot be president of the United States of America. He was born in Canada of Canadian citizens. Period. End of discussion. He does not meet the natural-born citizen requirement to be president as put forth in the Constitution. And what is very alarming is all of Ted Cruz's supporters are apparently okay with ignoring the Constitution to get their boy in. Which means if he were somehow to become president, he and his supporters are going to go on ignoring the Constitution. And we've already had way too much of that as it is. Now, overwhelmingly, the polls are showing that Donald Trump is going to have a lot of fun down there in South Carolina, barring shenanigans by Diebold. Monmouth poll has Trump at 35%, Cruz at 19%. Bloomberg has Trump at 36%, Cruz at 17%. let's see, the South Carolina House poll, Trump 35%, Cruz 16%, Rubio 16%. Now, amazingly enough, there's one poll that came out with Cruz slightly in the lead, and it's being blasted all over the media. Fox News was carrying it, Wall Street Journal was carrying it, NBC was carrying it. See, Cruz is now ahead. We found this one poll. And it was a very filtered poll, where they were polling only people who saw themselves as very conservative, extreme conservative. And they got the numbers they wanted. Cruz is leading, which is going to make it easier for them to steal the election. Because, see, this poll showed that Cruz was winning as we go into South Carolina. But it's completely meaningless to have these polls that are that filtered. In a poll taken of dentists who are deaf in one ear and left-handed and born on an even-numbered day, Ted Cruz is now in the lead. You can see how ridiculous it gets. The only polls that really matter are polling the likely voters. That's it. And in polls that are polling the likely voters, Trump is way, way ahead. Over at MSNBC, the Morning Joe show basically is describing Trump's campaign is unstoppable. Huge amount of momentum. And right now, as of the last poll, the only candidate with single digits is Jeb Bush. It looks like bringing out George H.W., and Barbara wasn't the positive they thought it was going to be, because we remember what happened under the two previous Bush presidencies. We're not as dumb as they are all hoping that we are. And a lot of pundits are saying that if Jeb Bush comes out of South Carolina with single digits, that's it for his candidacy. He can't recover from that. And, you know, it's amazing. Before New Hampshire, it'll be a reset. Bush is going to have the momentum. He's going to be there. Tank. And they're already saying at this time, there's going to be a surprise outcome in South Carolina. Bush is going to be on the ascendancy. Talk about wishful thinking. Now then, with regard to the use of the term unstoppable, if anybody from the Trump campaign is listening to this, and I think they are because I'm already on their mailing list, please keep in mind what happened to Robert Kennedy the moment he became unstoppable. He was stopped the hard way. So please make sure Donald is wearing his Kevlar undies, because we're already into the wet work season with Scalia. And by the way, we posted a flashback to a CNN story from 2012 about one of the witnesses to the Robert Kennedy assassination saying there were at least 2 guns, which makes sense. There were something like 15 bullet holes, and Sirhan's gun only carried 8 rounds. Oh, no, it's a single gun. Sirhan was all alone. And yes, Kennedy was shot from behind, and Sirhan was in front, but if you lean way over and you put the gun this way, it's possible. The FBI actually did that. They tried to stage a circumstance where they could put the FBI agent playing Sirhan where the witnesses said his feet were, but have him lean way over, around, and behind the guy playing Kennedy to shoot him from the rear. I mean, that's how absurd it was getting out there. Now, as some of the other GOP candidates have dropped out, the conventional wisdom and the GOP leadership and the corporate media were saying, well, these supporters of these candidates who have dropped out, they're going to flock to Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Rubio. And apparently, no. They are moving over to Donald Trump. According to a new Quinnipiac poll, Trump is absorbing all of these supporters from the candidates who are dropping out. And here's where it gets really weird. As you know, when Trump started his campaign, the GOP basically bullied him into signing this agreement that he wouldn't run as an independent. And Trump foolishly did sign it. Trump is now saying that the GOP is not keeping their half of the agreement. Gee, Don, did you really think they were going to? These are politicians. Shame on you for not knowing better. But even though Donald Trump has not been getting any money at all from the big GOP donors like Sheldon Adelson, the GOP leadership is demanding that Donald Trump follow their platform. You will have to be our kind of Republican. You're not allowed to be your kind of Republican, even though being his own kind of Republican is what's making Trump so popular. I think it signals they know that Trump may well win the nomination, and now they're trying to hijack him. They know he can't be bought. He can't be bribed. They're just trying to find some way to shame him into going back into the little neocon universe and not cause any trouble. And that's not going to work either. Now, as you know, there was a big stink here where Wednesday Trump said, I tell the truth, the war in Iraq was a disaster. And everybody is just up in arms. How could you say that? Iraq was a tremendous victory. We did this. You will love our wars. We all know Iraq was a disaster, not even counting the fact that we got lied and tricked into it. It was a disaster. None of the objectives we were told the war was for were accomplished. We didn't remove the weapons of mass destruction. There weren't any. We didn't punish Saddam for supporting al-Qaeda because he wasn't doing it. We didn't get revenge for 9/11 because Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. It was a disaster. It was a complete failure. We're still stuck in it. Trump is right. And they're scared that the American people are going to be listening to Donald Trump and say, you know, there's something really funny going on here. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And so here we have Donald Trump out there basically calling the George W. Bush presidency for what it was. 9/11 happened on George W. Bush's watch. Because of that incident involving the Secret Service at Booker Elementary School, it's pretty obvious Bush and his people were part of 9/11. The Iraq War was a mistake. Bush did lie to us. And, of course, the only response the Bush and their supporters and the GOP have is, how dare you? How dare you say the president lied? And I'd like to remind everybody that after the World Trade Centers came crashing down, President George W. Bush stated on 2 separate occasions captured on videotape that he saw the first plane hit the World Trade Center, and then he jokes about, well, I'm a pilot myself, and I said there's a really bad pilot and everything like that. And he made this statement twice. The problem is there was obviously no live video coverage of the first plane hitting the tower being broadcast on any television networks. There couldn't be. Video of that first plane hitting the tower did not air on the networks until after the second plane had hit the second tower. The only way Bush could have seen the first plane hit the first tower is if he had a private closed-circuit hookup, which would definitely nail him for being part of the plan there. But he said it twice. So Donald Trump is correct. George Bush was lying about that and so many other things. Now, the good news here is that this little tiff between Donald Trump and the Bushes has made 9/11 a current topic again. I'm sure that the perpetrators of 9/11 were starting to breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, they're talking about Scalia. They're not talking about dancing Israelis and Secret Service, dog that didn't bark, and signs of thermite all over the building. And we're safe on that. No, wrong. It's now a current topic again. People are going back to the net. They're starting to do web searches about all the suspicious things about 9/11. All right, let's grab ourselves a phone call here from Ivan in Ohio. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hey, Mike. A long time no speak. I'm listening to you on the phone right now. I don't have internet, but I just wanted to call and say thank you for bringing that up about Glenn Beck, because I have been complaining to my wife about this Ted Cruz crap with him since probably the end of December, maybe January. It drives me crazy, him and his crocodile tears and his phony baloney. And I just wanted to tell you thanks.
Well, you're welcome. But the thing for me is for Glenn Beck to be out there and shamelessly exploiting Scalia's assassination. I mean, he's out there, he's got the bloody shirt, he's wagging it saying, see, God wants you to vote for Ted Cruz. And it's only February, and we're already seeing the signs of panic in several of these campaigns.
Yeah. He needs to keep his religion out of politics. I mean, for one thing.
Absolutely.
You know what? I'm a Christian. I don't really practice. I'm kind of more agnostic than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But he needs to not mix that stuff up. Just look at history. It never mixed well before, did it?
No, it hasn't. My ancestors certainly felt that back in the 1490s. Anyway, listen, Ivan, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here, and thank you very much for the phone call. Now, there's one thing we can say about Donald Trump. He's not worried about upsetting people. He's got that kind of thick skin I was talking about before. All right, you don't like me? Fine. You know, something I said offended you? Fine. Be offended. I don't care. Apparently, the Pope came on out and called Donald Trump unchristian for wanting to build a wall on the border between Mexico and the United States. The Pope said, this is a direct quote, "A person who thinks only about building walls, wherever they may be, and not building bridges is not Christian. This is not in the gospel." Now, folks, I've been to the Vatican. There are walls there. Big walls, tall walls, very thick walls, guarded walls. You do not get in there without permission. You do not become a citizen of the Vatican without their permission. And getting a Vatican passport, that's the hardest one on planet Earth, to become a citizen of the Vatican. And for the Pope, who's living in a fortress, to come on out and chastise Donald Trump for wanting the right to control who comes into our country and who doesn't. Boy, they got to be really desperate trying to drag the Pope into this whole mess. But they've just succeeded in making the Pope look nonsensical. Because you can't live in a walled city like that and start screaming about people who want walls being unchristian. Of course, I'm sure from the Protestant side, they don't think the Pope is Christian anyway, but I don't want to reignite those wars. All right, Hillary Clinton is out there. She's struggling to try and regain the initiative against Bernie Sanders. She's out there pandering to everybody. She's got these feminist icons out there literally exploiting gender. You know, if you're a woman, you've got to vote for Hillary. We've got to have a woman in the Oval Office. And of course, Bill Clinton is out there saying, I already did that and I got impeached. They're trying everything. Now, Hillary Clinton had a meeting with 100 leaders of South Florida's Jewish community. No press was allowed. Closed-door meeting. But it was reported in the Times of Israel that Hillary Clinton has promised if she's elected president, her top priority is going to be strengthen the U.S.-Israel alliance. We know what that means. More of your money going to Israel. Crack down on boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. No more hope for the Palestinians. Hillary's going to be a whore for Israel. That's it. That's the promise she made in this meeting. And I'd like to remind you all, no government can serve two masters. And a government that serves Israel cannot, does not, and will not serve the American people. A friend of Israel is no friend of America. And in these dark, troubled times we are in, on the brink of a world war, America needs leaders who are going to put America first, second, and third, and very clearly from her statements, quoted in the Times of Israel, Hillary Clinton wants to run this country for Israel, not for you. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Bob in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi Mike, how are you? I hope all is well.
For a Thursday.
Yeah, I think Gary Franchi may have touched on something that why Cruz is being allowed by the Republican Party to run, as he helped Bush steal Florida in the 2000 election and was paid back. His wife is a member of, works for Goldman Sachs. She also was on the Building a North American Community Task Force, which was sponsored by the Council on Foreign Relations with the Canadian Council of Chief Executives and Consejo Mexicano de Asuntos Internacionales. So it's possible that Mr. Cruz, with the crisis in Canada, Mexico not doing well, and the U.S. soon to follow suit, the result might be a new president who from Canada, the Canadians would be more apt to accept it than an American. But that could be the reason.
Well, I don't care what the reason is. It is illegal for them to do.
Run.
Yeah, he can't run. He was born. He was born in Canada. Both of his parents were Canadian citizens at the time of his birth. They had surrendered their citizenships in the U.S. and Cuba to become Cuban citizens. We put up the link to the Wikipedia page on Canadian immigration law as it was at the time of Cruz's birth. I mean, he's got nothing. In fact, he may not have even really been technically eligible to be in the Senate. Exactly. And what is alarming is not Ted Cruz himself, but how everybody who supports him just has this attitude that the Constitution doesn't matter anymore. The Bill of Rights doesn't matter anymore. And my position is that if the government is not following the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it is not a legal, legitimate government, and we do not owe them any loyalty, obedience, pay their bills, and certainly not sacrifice the life and limb of our children in their wars of conquest, which they seem to have a lot more of those planned. Okay?
Agreed. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're coming up on our first top of the hour break with news and commercials. When we come back on, a little bit more stuff about Hillary Rodham Clinton and some other developments along there. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, and we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from Leroy in Georgia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What's going on, Mike? It's Leroy.
Yes.
Hey. Man, I was checking out things Scalia said on YouTube after his abrupt departure from this life.
Yes.
And he was talking about racial entitlements, that it's very hard to undo them. And one would assume immediately that he might have been talking about welfare or subsidies paying to the rich. But what if he was talking about what you were just mentioning when it comes to Hillary, the Hildebeest, and Israel, because they get the largest cut, right, after Japan and what this current clown has given to the Mideast, right?
Okay, I'm having a little trouble following you, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Israel has succeeded in pretty much subverting the entire U.S. government, and there are very few people willing to stand up to them. Now, Donald Trump is paying lip service to Israel because he knows, he's going to need those votes. And he's been very honest in saying he has business dealings in Israel, and he doesn't want those to go away. But looking at the Israeli media, it is very obvious that they don't see Trump as a fanatical supporter of Israel. And that's why they want Hillary, and Hillary is perfectly willing to sell out the entire U.S. population to Israel's service as long as she gets to sit in the Oval Office.
I don't think there's enough room to park that big. Well, you know the rest.
Let's not get personal here, okay?
Yeah, but even if she does give them the largest sum to talk about cutting them out, that would definitely make Scalia a target of Israel, not to excuse the current Barack insane Obama that's in the White House.
Well, given where Scalia met his demise, that sort of argues against any outsiders. It would have been easier for Israel to get at him inside Washington, D.C., arrange a traffic accident or something. Anyway, Scalia's funeral is on Saturday. We all know he was assassinated. The fine details don't really matter anymore. We all know the government's lying to us again. Anyway, Leroy, got to let you go. We're going to get back to the news here. We're getting a breaking story from Russia today. Apparently, Turkish military vehicles and troops have crossed the Syrian border near Aleppo. They're starting to dig trenches. The party is on, apparently. Now, getting on back to Hillary Clinton. Hillary is already over in Nevada campaigning. She's got a comfortable lead over Sanders in South Carolina, so she's already moved on to Nevada. What's interesting is there's a new CNN poll was released yesterday, found Clinton with just a 1-point lead in Nevada. And their caucuses are Saturday. And that's a huge change because in a late December poll, Clinton was ahead of Sanders by 23 points. And she's lost 22 just in a little over a month and a half. Now, in South Carolina, their primary's on the 27th. Clinton has an 18-point lead, according to CNN, over Sanders. But even that has narrowed since New Hampshire. Because in mid-January, Clinton had a 33-point lead in South Carolina. Her numbers are plunging. Now, as you heard on the SRN news break, it almost doesn't matter what you, the Democratic voters, want. Hillary has locked up the superdelegates. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's the head of the Democratic National Committee, had never made it a secret that she was going to get the superdelegates to all commit to Hillary because Hillary is going to be your president, and what you, the voters, want just doesn't matter anymore. Frankly, if I were a Democratic voter, I would be changing parties right now. Not that the Republicans are that much better, if you remember what they did to Ron Paul in 2008 and 2012. But this is not democracy. And I'm looking at this article over in the Daily Mail that is saying, no, America has lost its democracy. The rulers are chosen by the party machines. And they're absolutely right. It's like the old Soviet Union. And even if Hillary ties Bernie Sanders from here on out, she's got the nomination locked up because she's got the superdelegates. And what you, the Democratic voters, may want, who cares? Now, this may be the reason that a larger and larger segment of the American public does not identify with being either Republican or Democrat. They're independent, libertarian, green. A lot of them just saying, I have no party affiliation. The system's broken. Now, a lot of people are making a big deal over this moment during the Democratic debate, during one of Hillary's speeches where she had another one of her famous coughing fits. And it does sound like she's kind of sick. And apparently the prism glasses have come back. Remember the little Fresnel prism that she has to have in one of her eyewear lenses because she can't fuse? I think on top of everything else, I mean, Hillary seems to have some serious medical issues. I always thought that there was supposed to be some doctor somewhere who would certify the good health of a candidate before they even ran. Of course, these days, good health means they're taking all the mandated pills and lotions and vaccines and everything. All right, let's grab a couple of phone calls here. Tony in Alaska. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. You're on the air.
Yes, I would like to talk to you about Bernie Sanders and Hillary. And I'm not I don't go with no side. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I'm just a person who wants to have a fair shot at life. And we all of us know that it's not the politicians that run anything; it's the money, right?
Yes.
And it's the people who have the money, right? So the reason I think people not really like Bernie Sanders, but like his ideas, is because when you see on MSNBC, which everybody knows is real liberal, but when you see having bankers come on and they're bashing Bernie Sanders with not even good arguments, just name calling, being more so-called right wing than Fox News, then you know something is up. Then you know, what are they afraid of? What are they afraid of what he's saying? And imagine if those ideas got to what is right after the Republican and Democratic, then you have the national, I guess, elections. I guess you have.
You mean the general election. After the primary season, there's the general election in November.
Yeah, if those ideas got to the general election floor, and then I think it would open up everybody's eyes to,
There's no general election floor. The general election is where we all go and cast the final vote for our representatives, Congress critters, senators, and the president. The ideas are getting out now. That's the purpose of the primary season, is for the candidates to get out there, go into every state, and tell the people of that state what they want to hear. And that's where the ideas get put out there. But you're right; they're very much afraid of Bernie Sanders because he is more of a person who thinks that the blessings of life have to be made a little more even, just for the purely logic sense that an economy that is as out of balance as this one cannot function, and that's exactly what's going on. Now, as I mentioned before, really the world breaks down into just two kinds of people. Those who think we all deserve an equal share of life's blessings, and those who think they should own it all and the rest of us work for them. It's called socialism versus fascism. And if I have to pick between the two of them, I'm going to go socialist. And I'm sorry, Tony.
One more point because of the Glenn Beck.
Okay, I got to put you on. Tony, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. My show. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're going to finish up our call from Tony in Alaska. You had one more thing you wanted to mention.
Yes, because people. The reason I meant by national floor is I meant by the actual audience that they're going to impact. Because people like the Glenn Beck's people and then Ben Carson and the people who watch Fox News, we're only here, and they won't really listen to Bernie because they just believe in what they're told. But this gives him a chance for those ideas, and that's why I would love if Trump and Bernie, if they both won each ticket. Oh my God, the amount of people that would be tuned into these debates and the amount of people that would be tuned into the ideas that both of these candidates are telling. I think that would probably make people just, who cares about the elections? I'm just going to run my own life. And that leads me to another point, I know this is off topic, but, that's why they don't like cash and precious metals, because those are things that they can't control. And, that's another thing. When you have the one people who are trying to tell people, don't listen to this person, then I think those are ideas that we really need to listen to and really need to pick up and try to understand.
Okay, well, I think I agree with you. It would be an interesting debate between Trump and Sanders. Right now, barring a sudden dramatic event, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, it does look like Trump is going to be the GOP nominee. Hillary obviously has a lock on the Democratic nomination. Unless somebody hits her with a felony charge, which she's guilty of. We've got the evidence. She's committed felony violations of Title 18, and I'm wondering why they haven't slapped the handcuffs on her just yet. Or her medical issues may indeed become a greater problem moving forward. It's very obvious to the Democratic voters. Hillary does not have the popular vote. She is being machined into position as the nominee, and I would not be surprised to see a lot of Democrats switch parties. Because when they hold this whole dictatorship together under the illusion that we, the people, have some degree of control over events in our country through the election process, when they rub our noses in the fact that the elections don't really mean anything at all, the people are going to get angry. They're already getting angry. I'm seeing it in the emails and everything. Anyway, listen, Tony, we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over here to Milton in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Michael. I called once before, and we spoke about the Nuremberg trial there, what happened with the cronies with the World War. I had a thing I was concerned about. If they should expedite this Third World War that they want so bad, all right, we lost, did we not?
I'm sorry, we lost which?
If they start the World War within the week, 2 weeks over there in Saudi Arabia, us as a people and a movement against the foul government that we don't like, okay, we lost, did we not?
Well, those of us who were opposed to war have lost, but in the larger scale of things, I don't think the United States can prevail in a full-on war with Russia and or China. And that's why we're literally risking nuclear warfare. And everybody loses in that. I mean, we've got these insane people in government who are willing to risk incinerating the surface of planet Earth just so they can have a taller stack of ink and paper than the guy next to them. These people really are insane. They really are insane to even be thinking of playing with this kind of stuff.
Well, I totally agree. But, like people are talking Like they have their hideaways to go during this big nuclear war exchange and all. But when they come out, it's the government is the enemy, so they're still alive. All right, and they were actually the enemy because you and I can coexist. We don't need government to tell us who the enemy is. We can coexist, you and I.
Well, personally, I want to hunt down all those 1% survival bunkers and just cement over the hatches.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay?
All right, like I said, we're not going to solve the world problem, but that's just something I was concerned, you know. We just got to leave it up to the Almighty if we want to call it that, right?
Well, remember what Ben Franklin used to say, God helps those who help themselves? So that's more of an activist position. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Yeah, we're seeing more and more news coverage about the fact that Turkish troops have gone into Syria and are apparently preparing defensive positions. The next question is, what is Russia going to do about it? Because Russia only 2 days ago was saying that if Turkey invades Syria and present a threat to Russian forces, Russia will carry out airstrikes on the Turkish forces inside Syria. They're making a point of saying they will not attack Turkey itself, but they will feel justified in attacking Turkish forces inside Syria. Don't forget, Turkey shot down that Russian plane inside Syria. So Russia's got a legitimate reason to view Turkish forces in Syria as a threat to Russia. It's kind of complicated here. Over the break, Fox News was showing Hillary Clinton's new commercial. And it's just tearing at the heartstrings. She's talking to this Hispanic child, and the child is saying, Mommy and Daddy are going to be deported. And Hillary's saying, there. If I'm president, we will not be deporting the illegal immigrants. And I have a question about that commercial. Who is it aimed at? Given that under U.S. law, illegal immigrants are not supposed to be allowed to vote. So who is that commercial for? I mean, that commercial to me seems aimed at the illegal immigrants to get them to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's election fraud. That commercial is an incitement to commit election fraud. It's amazing how out of control this is. We truly have a political elite who see themselves as a rebirth of medieval nobility. The laws don't apply to us. Remember Aiea Bathory? She's the real-life model for the Vampirella character. And actually, Aiea and Hillary look a lot alike. I have a comparison photo I'll have to put up there. And Aiea was a nutcase. She was just killing peasant people, mostly girls. She'd do things like, in the dead of winter, she'd take a bunch of girls, lock them in a cage outside, douse them with water, and then come out the next morning to see how they'd frozen to death. And there wasn't anything that could be done because she had a title of nobility. They literally had to change the laws of the country in order to be able to prosecute her. And we've got a ruling class now that operates the same way. The laws are just for you serfs, for you slaves, you little people. You must be constrained and controlled, but we're the elite. We are allowed to do whatever we want. The laws don't apply to us. That's not what America is supposed to be. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm looking at my email, and somebody just wrote on in and said, no, it's not a good idea to cement over the hatches on the 1%'s underground bunkers because you're cutting us off from a good supply of GMO-free food. Okay. I stand corrected. Now, there's a very worrisome statement that Obama is making, and the particular one I'm linking to is over at NBC News, where Obama says, I continue to believe Trump will not be the president. You say, the White House isn't a reality show. Trump had a reality show, but he got the reality show because he's a very successful businessman. He builds things. He makes stuff happen. He knows how to make stuff work. It's something that's seriously lacking inside Washington, D.C. But with Trump soaring in the polls and Hillary self-destructing, it sounds to me like Obama is counting on either Diebold or Smith & Wesson. Now, as the pollsters are going across the nation, they're now starting to look at possible pairings for the general election, and they're discovering that with the exception of Jeb Bush, all of the current GOP candidates are going to defeat Hillary Clinton in the general election. Jeb Bush can't. He's down there. He's trailing. He's dead last. The presumptive GOP nominee with all the money is dead last. Because we, the people, understand that the White House is not an hereditary throne to be passed back and forth between two dynastic ruling families. We've had it with that. All righty, let's see. We're going to grab some phone calls here. Roseanne in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Real quick question. What was the lady's name that you said put the little girl in cages and put water on them?
Ursa Bathory. Countess Bathory. The English would be Elizabeth Bathory. Countess Elizabeth Bathory. She got a
Okay.
She's got her own websites all over the place, you know.
I'll have to go look at. What do you think of what's going on with Nikki Haley? I kind of think I knew she got in through the Tea Party, but now it just looks like she's another paid hack like Rubio, who also got in through the Tea Party. So
well, the Tea Party got hijacked. When the Tea Party started out, they were going to be the new face of the Republican Party, and then they sicked Sarah Palin on them, and they got suckered in by her star power. And the Tea Party has now been co-opted. It's as GOP as the rest of the GOP. So I don't pay much attention to them anymore. I mean, when they were starting up, I was saying, yeah, this would be kind of cool. But yeah, they got co-opted, unfortunately. And yes, they're just more paid. Yeah, it's just perpetuating the industry of being paid whores for big money people.
Well, poopy pants. Have a good day.
Oh, I'm shocked. You've offended me. I have to do my shock dance and wet myself.
Have a good day.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to switch over here to Mo in Florida. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, thank you for taking my call. I just want to say, first of all, I would rather talk to you than the Pope.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, no, that's, can you imagine that? I don't want to put any religions down, but I mean, the influence he has with, 1.5 billion people, and just the nonsense between the political aspect of the whole thing is bizarre. But my question is this, and it's more of a general question, is that I think that we can, I've been following you pretty much since you started, and for the last, since the Vietnam War, when I saw that disaster and the lie it was, and then 9/11, and then, moving up through the whole chain with Ron Paul, I campaigned for him, right up through Alex Jones to the top. You!
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Well, that's how it kind of works. I just go to who tells the most truth and who's not afraid to speak power to truth and who's not being controlled. And that's what I know they think they believe about Donald Trump, and I hope he is too. But my is more of a just get your opinion, and I don't think I can argue with it. I don't think people are, most of the friends I know have 401ks, and yeah, they've gone down a little bit. They've done very well. Not all of them, but most of them are, they're starting to maybe cringe as long as their house value's up there and, they still have a job. But so my point to you is I don't really think nothing's going to change until these people start, necessity creates change, until they start hurting. And I feel that right now. I'm talking to people that I've gone all into cash, and how come the marketing is still going up? And I think it's just, my question, to boil it down to this, and I'll hang up and get your response. What do you think the tipping point would be? I mean, I know you've talked about it, but what actually do you think?
Well, you've already indicated what it is. Overwhelmingly, people tend to vote their wallet. What's going to be best for me? What's going to give me the highest take-home pay? What's going to allow me to take care of my family? What's going to allow me to own a home or start a business? People inevitably vote with their wallet, and that's overall a very good way to be thinking about it. The problem is in this day and age, all the candidates are saying, if you vote for me, I'll give you, 2 chickens a chicken in every pot and 2 cars in every garage. And they're all used to saying that, and people are used to believing it, and we don't get it. We got promises of prosperity from both Bushes and Clinton and Obama, and we're getting those same promises again. Ron Paul and before him, I'm trying to remember the other independent who ran. We're the only ones out there saying, there are some serious structural fundamental problems with this country. And Bernie Sanders is saying the same thing. There have to be some major changes in the way this nation conducts business, because it can't always be all of the people working and giving the money to a few people at the very top. That really is fascism, and ultimately, when the wealth becomes that unbalanced, the economy stops working, and that's the point we're at right now. But the money junkies are money junkies. They're addicts. They cannot see how their addiction is harming the wider community around them. They're just going to go on doing whatever they can to get more of those paper notes. And it really is an addiction. If you remember back that movie Inside Job, it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary a few years ago and then promptly vanished here in the United States. And they reported on this one experiment where scientists had literally wired up the brains of traders on Wall Street and discovered that whenever they made a big score and made a huge amount of money, the part of the brain that lit up was the exact same part of the brain that lights up when you're doing cocaine. It really is an addictive process. And, we're going to have an intervention. We're going to have an intervention of the money junkies and maybe a 12-step program for the money junkies, or, little patches. They start out, with a $50 taped to their arm, and then after 2 weeks they go down to a quarter, and after 2 weeks they go down to a dime, and after that they go down to a penny.
Hey, exactly, Michael. The last thing I'll get off so other people call in, but it really is like if you've ever known an addict that you need to go to Al-Anon because you can't fix them. And I think too many people in this country are have to come to the realization that this economy these people cannot be fixed. That we've got to separate. There's got to be enough people hurting to create a nucleus, or to tip the balance the other way, and then I think people start to say, hey, wait a minute, But they will. Well,
the majority of Americans are already hurting. But as long as there's a nucleus of very wealthy people who are happy that are in control of the media, they can keep on pretending everything is hunky-dory. But, it's kind of interesting if you think about it. We shouldn't have money addicts in charge of our monetary system. It makes about as much sense as having drug addicts in charge of the pharmacies. But that's the system that they have set up for themselves.
Well, that's what Joe Salente always said, is like the money changers. The only time Jesus lost his cool, whether you're religious or not. I'm not real religious, but, the only time he lost his cool was with the money changers, and it's never changed. It's still there. That bloodline just keeps going. But thank you very much, Mike.
All right, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And as we mentioned before, Barack Obama is out there on the warpath against Donald Trump, because at this point it is very obvious. If Donald Trump wins the GOP nomination, he is going to be the next president. Hillary cannot defeat Donald Trump. She wanted to run against Ted Cruz or Jeb Bush. She can just steamroller over them. She can't defeat Donald Trump. So Obama's out there and he's making all these weird comments about, the White House isn't a reality show. And came out with this very bizarre comment that Americans wouldn't want to give Trump the nuclear codes. Actually, I didn't want Obama to have those nuclear codes. Look at how many countries he's attacked. Talk about pot calling the kettle black. And no, that's not a racial insult, so you PC people, back off. Now, Marco Rubio is down there in South Carolina, and he showed up on CNN and participated in a real town hall meeting with Anderson Cooper. But then he went out to 4 other events that were billed as town halls, but they weren't. They were just speeches, because Rubio got up there and he talked at the audience, and then he left without taking any questions. So obviously there are some questions being asked in the town halls that Rubio needs to duck. Under the category of careful what you wish for, Ted Cruz is daring Donald Trump to sue him. Ted, that's a very reckless thing. I mean, personally, I don't think you should have been allowed to run. But looking at the Constitution, the circumstances of the citizenship of your parents, where you were born, and the existing law on which the Constitution was founded, you are not eligible to run for President of the United States of America or the Vice Presidency. We're going to grab ourselves a phone call. John in Wisconsin, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, Donald Trump's had a phenomenal week. Initially, he had called for that press conference, and I thought that he was going to come out with another, dynamite endorsement or something like that. And no, what did he do? He gave Cruz an ultimatum. Either you apologize for being a liar or I'm going to sue you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a win-win because if Cruz apologizes, he gets his he's a liar. So he's done. And if Trump sues him and makes him get that declaratory statement, he's also done. Because like you just said, he is not eligible, period, end of story.
Yeah, and
I also want to say that the purpose of the press conference was to put Cruz in that corner, but Fox News ran with the headline all day that Trump press conference was about attacking former President Bush, Jeb's brother, and it wasn't. And I also wanted to say I used to doubt the sincerity. What's going on here? I thought it was a little bread and circuses with Donald Trump being an actor, but I'm telling you right now, there ain't no way the Bush family put Jeb out there to be a punching bag for Donald Trump. This is real. This is real American patriotism going on here. Trump is.
You're right about that. I mean, they put Jeb Bush out there, the Neppet, thinking that they were going to manufacture and craft his presidency the way they had done George W. And we were going to go back to a country where the White House is handed off between the Bushes and the Clintons for generation after generation. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I think what is really revelatory about Jeb Bush's lack of success, he has had more money to play with than any other GOP candidate. I mean, he was spending money hand over fist in Iowa. Same thing up in New Hampshire, and they had the media saying, New Hampshire's going to be a game changer. Bush is going to rebound. And he fizzled. And he's dead last in the polls in South Carolina. And it's basically sending a message. Money no longer decides the outcome of the elections. We, the people, do. Which is why now they've got that superdelegate thing so they can tell the voters to go jump in the lake or to do something physiologically impossible with their votes.
In one of those early debates, remember when Trump took the shot at Jeb? He goes, I'm at 42, you're at 7. And Jeb came back with that, it doesn't matter. As a jaded Ron Paul guy, I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. We're going to go to convention, and he bought up all the delegates, and they're going to deliver the delegates to Jeb. You know what? After what's been going on, and Jeb just continuing to go down to single digits, there's no way. He's getting the crap beat out of him, and the Bushes are absolutely embarrassed. And now Fox News can't even defend the Bush family. Because, like you said, the American people don't want the Bush family.
We don't want the Bushes. We don't want the Clintons. We've had it with, these corrupt... Karl Rove is out there, calling Trump despicable for saying that Bush lied to get us into the war in Iraq. He did. He said there were nuclear weapons. And then he made that stupid little video for the White House press dinner where, Bush is going around the Oval Office looking into the rugs and saying, oh, no nuclear weapons here. Big joke.
I tweeted that out, man. I tweeted that video out to so many people going, I mean, this is wonderful. Between you, Alex Jones, everybody sees it. The Trump is for real. And he's going to be the next president because he's got those stadiums packed with supporters.
Well,
I did send you an email back when.
Okay.
Now, I'm running against Paul Ryan. I'm in the exploratory stages right now of running as an independent against Paul Ryan because I just moved in his district last April.
Oh, good.
And since he's a national figure and he sucks, if I can get the ballots and get on if I can get the signatures and get on the ballot in November, maybe we can do an interview or something like that. But I'm serious about mounting an independent campaign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you get your campaign website set up, send over the URL and I'll link to it.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. All right, we're going to let you go here and switch over to Fernando in California. Boy, the phone lines are really loaded up now. Fernando, aloha, what's on your mind?
Yes, basically, it's really funny how the Scalia death was predicted on Family Guy, like 10 years to the day when the Dick Cheney shooting happened, when he shot his friend accidentally, and basically Family Guy, they said that Dick Cheney shot 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 Scalia in a hunting accident. But what really happened was basically Scalia was probably shot with what's called a heart attack gun, and they basically put it on the cartoon. You could go on YouTube, look Family Guy, Scalia.
That's kind of an irrelevancy, and I don't really, these things happen. I mean, life imitates art and vice versa and vice versa. At this point, we all agree we're being fed a lie about what happened to Scalia, the way that they quickly pronounced his death in violation of Texas law and rushed him off for embalming with no autopsy. It screams cover-up. And at that point, we can stop. We don't need to know any more about it. It's another case of a government assassination, and we shouldn't listen to anything the government has to say. Fernando, thank you very much. I'm going to let you go, and we're going to grab, hang on a second, Bob in Colorado. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha to you, too, Michael. With everything that's going on, everything is just crashing so fast. I don't think we're even going to make it to November. I mean, everybody's freaking out about who's going to make it and who's not. All the delegates, everybody knows it's all bought anyway. It is going to come down, and I really, truly believe that it's just any time, and these elections aren't even going to be in the forethought of anybody's mind anymore with what's coming soon. So.
Well, you could very well be right. I don't think Hillary can hold together the cover-up on her spying until November. I don't think they're going to be able to keep this Ponzi scheme economy going. If we actually start World War III, if it goes nuclear, it's going to be over in about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and look at Scalia now. I mean, there's a lot of brain-dead people, but this has got to wake a lot of people up, I'll tell you.
It has. I can tell from the email.
Right.
People who just absolutely did not want to believe that their government could do these sorts of things, they're waking up and saying, yeah, it's all breaking through on them. John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Vince Foster, and they say, we've got criminals running the country. Yeah. That's how they got to run the country, by being criminals, by being willing to do things ordinary, moral, law-abiding people will not do. Anyway, let's see. We lost that call. We're coming up on a news break. We got 3 callers. I'm going to ask you to please be very, very patient. And as soon as we get back from our top of the hour news and our commercial break, I will take all of your phone calls as we head into hour number 3. So we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open. 877-300-7645. Actually, they're almost completely jammed up. So let's get some of these phone calls. Randy in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, not much. I was just thinking about if Donald Trump did president, he's going to have to be living in public housing for the first time in his life.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be interesting. But as public housing goes, the White House isn't too shabby.
Oh, no, it's not. But on a serious note, if Donald Trump has his own personal bodyguards?
Yes, he does. He has his own security that are operating inside the Secret Service protective detail.
Great.
Yes.
Because I just worry about him getting assassinated.
I do too. In fact, I just put up another article. Everybody's saying exactly the same thing. He is a threat to the status quo. He's a threat to Israel. And, now that the Ron Paul treatment didn't work, the next step is the Robert Kennedy approach.
Unfortunately, that'll probably be true, but if it does happen, I do hope that he makes sure that everyone knows why he was assassinated.
Well, we'll know he was assassinated, and we can figure out the why if we care to. What we just know is whoever the patsy being offered up again, another Lee Oswald or Sirhan is not going to be it.
Yeah. And I think with his own private security, they're going to be looking for anyone who even attempts to do that.
Yeah, well, look at John F. Kennedy. The Secret Service protective detail. The agent who was supposed to be riding on the back of Kennedy's car was waved off. That's on film. The entire Kennedy protective detail was out getting blasted on Everclear in the bars the night before. That's a violation of policy. And if you look at the film, okay, none of Kennedy's Secret Service detail make a move until after the headshot. But if you look at the James Altgen photo, which is looking down the motorcade from in front, you can see Vice President Johnson's protective detail. They're out of the car doing their job on that first shot. Kennedy's people are just standing there. Sometimes the Praetorian Guard turns on Caesar, and that's why I'm very glad that Trump has his own second, more internal security, and I hope they're really doing their job because, yeah, Trump is a serious, serious threat to the established status quo, and we know the status quo likes to get rid of people that are in their way. You know, Trump could turn out to be the latest entry on the Clinton dead body list or the Obama dead body list.
Yeah, that is very possible.
It is very possible, and we have to talk about it and acknowledge it so that people understand. If there's a shot fired at Trump, it didn't come from a crazed, lone nut assassin, registered trademark Central Intelligence Agency. All right, I need to let you go. We got a bunch of calls I need to get to, and we're going to go to Frank in California. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I haven't spoken to you for about over a year now. But I think last time I spoke to you was about, the PC hassles. I was having Windows 8 and nothing was working. So I got everything fixed. It took me 6 months. I was able to buy a Mac and partition the drive to run into Windows XP. So guess what? Everything works now.
Yes.
But anyway, what I called you about, I was at my friend's house the other day and I was watching Obama make that pathetic speech about how Trump will not be president, because of the reality show and the entertainment industry type of thing. But what occurred to me is that
hey, it worked for Reagan. I mean, did anybody stop to think about? Ronald Reagan. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I felt offended, because I did raise my voice when I, in front of some people, and they took notice of it. So, the way he said it, though, he's not going to be president, as if he knows something. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that was the way it hit me. He's either counting on Diebold or Smith & Wesson to make sure that Trump does not get the Oval Office.
Yeah, and it's scary, but I really like the guy. My wife's starting to like him as well, and because he makes a lot of sense. And did you notice yesterday in that town hall meeting how he's very quick to answer? He doesn't have to think about lying or anything. He's just out with it. Bang, 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 bang. It's like, he tells the truth because the truth just come out naturally, where other politicians have to think or, just try to remember things to say or whatever.
Yeah.
Trump is right on the ball.
Oh, he's a very sharp guy. There's no question. He's a very, very sharp guy.
That's what I thought about.
If I get involved in the local Trump organization out here, I'm hoping to get a chance to actually meet him. I've only ever met one president face-to-face in my life, and he wasn't actually president at that time. And that left a sour taste in my mouth. That was Richard Nixon.
Get him on the show. Get him on the show because
he's welcome here at any time. I guess I don't rate, and I understand that. He's dealing with the top people.
He was brave enough to go on the other alternative radio show,
yes.
and he really did make an impression because I thought this would never happen. I guess Rand Paul did the same, but Trump got a really, a huge audience that
Trump
day.
is welcome here anytime, that he wants for however long he wants. No questions asked.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over here real quick to Mike in New York. Aloha, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, aloha to you, Mike. I have an observation, a very telling observation. Obama has a golden opportunity on Saturday to attend the funeral of Antonin Scalia, give one of his mushy speeches, maybe fake a few tears, hug the wife, and so on. And that would be a huge, not only a boost for him, but I think it would help him to get the next nominee on the court. He would look, quote unquote, so presidential. There is no plausible reason why Obama would go against his own interest by not showing up at the funeral and faking some kind of affection. You understand? Unless he's the culprit. How can he bring himself to face the wife and the children?
Well, I don't think I don't think it signals that he's the culprit, but I think he is aware that everybody thinks he's the culprit. And I guess he doesn't want to take a risk of having an embarrassing video come out like the one of Bill Clinton leaving Ron Brown's funeral where he's lapping it up until he sees the camera and then he goes into his Tier Act. But it is...
I mean, ultimately, he's like, to use Godfather terminology, he's a button man. Of course, there's higher powers that would have to pull off something like this. I mean, but of course, he is part of this. But that is why I believe that he's not showing up. It's just too... I mean, the man is shameful, but I don't think he's that shameful. But it's really a disgrace not to show up at the funeral of a Supreme Court justice.
I think it is, but I think his handlers are thinking if he does show up, it's just going to link him and Scalia in the public mind in a way that Obama does not want to be linked, is what it really comes down to.
Yeah.
Okay, so
well.
All right.
Thanks for keeping up the good fight.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Peter in California. Aloha, Peter. I may have to hold you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Oh, that's fine, Mike, if you do. I'm just calling to remind everybody here that gun control is of course on the table here with this next Supreme Court appointee. I also want to point out that they made a big deal when I believe one of the last ones that was appointed that there were more Catholics on the Supreme Court than there were Protestants. But the press failed to point out that four of the eight now are Jewish. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever says anything about that.
Oh, no, you would be a filthy anti-Semite who wants Hitler to come back and gas Jewish babies if you pointed that out.
Yeah, I mean, well over, of course, they're like about 2% of the population, but they're about 10% of the Congress. The largest donors of both parties are Haim Saban for the Democrats and
Sheldon Adelson. By the way, if you look at the Senate schedule, they take Jewish holidays off. Just something for you to think about. We got to take a break for commercials. I'm going to hold you over, Peter. I'm going to come right back to you as soon as we finish these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we get back to the phone lines here, I want to point something out to the people from the White House who are listening to this program. When Barack Obama is out there trying to ridicule Donald Trump for having a reality show, I'd like to remind you that reality show, The Apprentice, ran for 14 seasons. It was a major success. I'd like to see how long Barack Obama could get a reality show. Probably last about as long as Sarah Palin's did. All right, we're going to go back here to Peter in California. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I was saying about the fact that if this next appointee of the Supreme Court is another Jewish person, it will make 5 out of 9. Then the fact that right now, Mike, there's two bills. There's H.R. 4514 and Senate Bill S-2531, which are right now in front of both sections of Congress that would make it illegal to participate in BDS. And it's kind of analogous, Mike, of somebody in the 60s saying, say the Klan was making tons of money on hoods and torches and using all that money to lynch black people and so on and so forth. And we decided, well, I'm not going to spend any money on that. I don't agree with anything that they're doing. And then the government coming and telling us you must buy from them and you must support them. That's the same thing. And the last thing I want to say about this is that this is what was going on at the University of California system about their changing anti-Semitism definition to be any criticism of Israel. There's also something embedded about anti-BDS and the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah.
These two bills here. But, there's going to be a problem with the Supreme Court. Regardless of who the new appointee, the new judge is going to be, there's a problem. Boycotts are recognized nonviolent forms of protest protected under the First Amendment. There isn't anywhere they can go to justify suppression of BDS
we're allowed to criticize governments, especially our own. And the government of Israel deserves criticism. And I noticed that the Southern Poverty Law Center is out there screaming about, oh, the Jew haters are up, the surge in anti-extreme. How is it that so many people in the American nation don't like their government and don't like Israel? And, of course, it's ridiculous. We know why. And, again, it's got nothing to do with their religion or ethnicity. It's the behavior of people in government that is causing all the grief and misery. And I'll tell you, at the point where the Supreme Court throws out the First Amendment and says that we cannot criticize a foreign government, I think, as far as I'm concerned, the government has lost all legitimacy. And I owe them no allegiance or obedience or loyalty whatsoever here, because trying to say that criticism of Israel's government is just hatred of the Jews is like trying to block criticism of the Nazis by saying you just hate the German people.
Exactly, Michael, but I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but it has been for decades illegal for a U.S. corporation to boycott Israel.
Yes.
Even though the Citizens United thing says that they're people and they have rights of freedom of speech, for decades it's been illegal for even a corporation to do it. But the point to all this that I want to hammer home is that here's a group of people who is willing to completely sacrifice all of our First Amendment rights in order to cover up the immoral wrongdoing that they can't possibly defend in open discussion. But yet they're willing to submarine our First Amendment rights, our sacred First Amendment rights, in order to protect their own. And
that's exactly it. But, you know, again, I have a zero-tolerance policy on this. The authority of the federal government rests on the Constitution and its amendments. And if it's not playing by the rules, it is not a legal, legitimate government of this nation. And I think Americans ought to be absolutely furious when we have so many hungry and homeless people and our roads are crumbling and our bridges are unsafe and we've got toxic water pouring out of our taps to see our government just continue to worship Israel. We have to take care of Israel. We've got to protect Israel from criticism. Again, look, if you love Israel, move there. Run for the Knesset. We need the Congress to be serving the American people, not a foreign power. We have a Vichy government in Washington, D.C. We're just as occupied under Israel as France was under the Nazis. Wake up it. Yeah.
Exactly, Michael. It's just, to me, it's just unbelievable. And when you consider that the Treasury Department seems to be nobody but a Jewish person can hold that secretaryship. The Federal Reserve, that's been for 30 years that way. It's total control.
It really is. We are an occupied nation. And we don't like it any more than Iran did from 1953 to 1979. We don't like it any more than the people of Libya like it. We don't like it any more than the people of Yemen like it. We're sick of foreign puppet rule. It is time to kick the foreign puppets out. Period. End of discussion. All right, Peter, I got to let you go. We got a lot of callers, and I need to get to these things. Keith in Montana. Aloha, Keith. I'm looking at that link that you sent me right now. What's on your mind?
Well, that's part of it, but the other thing, you remember back when Jeb Bush was running the Bush campaign, and then they did that Georgia fraud thing where they miscategorized and labeled everyone as felons who were trying to vote down in Florida, which got their votes kicked out?
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, that movie they made of it, Recount with Kevin Spacey, that's a great film. I wish we could find that one again.
And I remember there was a slight video of Bush headed back from the plane from Florida back to the White House, basically saying they had already sealed the election. But anyway, anyone can Google 2012 dead voters and see how many millions of people voted in the last election that was dead. Then the other thing is, one of my veteran friends from Iraq, 3 tours, he told me about how they miscategorized everything, and I think this was done under Carl Rove's watch, where all the pre-voting forms were sent to all those military, which would now have been transferred to Iraq. And on their forms it says, do not forward. And the thing about it was, it didn't come back to like Maelstrom Air Force Base, stuff like that. It was just the address alone, to like Willie Mays, not to, cite anyone here, but anyway, everyone that was eligible to vote just had their address on there. So when those forms all came back, they came back to the same address, and they were all disqualified for voter fraud.
Well, they were not only disqualified for that, they were trying to disqualify the military vote, which tends to be conservative, with ridiculous things about they missed a deadline and the forms hadn't gotten there in time in the first place. I mean, our elections are dishonest. Most Americans have not been aware of the degree of election fraud that controls this country. Those of us who are truth activists have, but this year, everybody is getting a wake-up call after what they saw happen in New Hampshire. It's fully on display. Anyway, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much, and we'll be right back after these. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We have 2 callers waiting on the line. We're going to take those 2 phone calls. We're not going to take any more new phone calls. And before we get to these calls, though, we're getting a report now that Iraq may apply to Russia for assistance to expel the Turkish forces that are on their soil. Now, as reported earlier, Turkish forces have crossed into Syria. They're building defensive works. Turkish forces invaded Iraq quite a while ago. And Iraq's been saying, please leave. You are not welcome here. And Erdogan's been saying, we don't care. We're going to go where we're going to go. And now we're seeing Iraq may ask Russia for help in dealing with the Turkish forces in Iraq. And I think we can presume safely that Assad is asking Russia for help to expel the Turkish forces invading Syria. This is it. This is the beginning of the big war here. All right, let's take these last 2 phone calls. We're going to talk with Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I want to just congratulate you for having Larry Pickney on yesterday. It was great. Now, I really wanted to talk about Trump security because when I looked at history, the closest to people being assassinated was Reagan. While Bush was vice president, and
yes.
Ford, while Rockefeller was vice president, 2 very close assassination attempts. Also, some of the best presidents have either been attempt assassinations or actually assassinated, going back to of course, Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, JFK himself, of course.
And large numbers of them were a threat to the bankers. If you read All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, it goes in there. And it talks about all the presidents who wanted to restore a public currency and they died of poisonings or whatever. It's a consistent theme. I mean, why do you think they put John J. McCloy on the Warren Commission for the Kennedy assassination? John J. McCloy wasn't a forensics expert or a law enforcement officer. He was a banker. Was president of the Chase Manhattan Bank. So why was he on the Warren Commission? To make sure you never found out.
Okay. And all I can say is this. Trump is now going into territory. I mean, I love it. I mean, it's great. But he's got to make sure he's got his own security, and he relies on them more than on the Secret Service. I would not rely on the Secret Service.
Absolutely not. They turned and looked the other way when possibly both Kennedys got whacked. So
right.
Yeah.
That's all I can say for Donald Trump. Be careful, Donald. We need you. This country needs you right now.
I second that. All right.
And if it's like Len Beck says that only the left believes in the 9/11 conspiracy things and all that, but that's nonsense. Patriots believe in it. Okay? Patriots who know how to put the dots together and understand that this Mark,
we don't believe. We have concluded based on the available evidence. We don't need to believe. We know. Belief is something that you have in the absence of knowing. We know. We have studied the facts. We have concluded rationally what happened. Belief does not enter into it at all. Anyway, listen, I need to let you go. We got to get this last phone call here from Brandon in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just wanted to make a point about the Pope's statement today concerning Mr. Trump. I consider myself a practicing Catholic, and I've got to say I've never been so upset, or I don't know how to feel about a Pope coming and getting so involved in American politics. And I got to say, it really speaks volumes now as to how Mr. Trump has been able to speak to so many Americans. I'm a New Yorker, and I can honestly say that the more that, this man is getting attacked from the left, the right, and now even the religious, makes me like him more and more every day. And, he says things that I couldn't consider being, politically possible, several years ago, because I used to be a huge Ron Paul supporter. But, with what the Pope is doing, calling out Mr. Trump, it's really, making, I think, Americans, especially American Catholics, have to choose. And, I don't want to be stuck in that choice, but, I have strong feelings about, nationalistic pride in a country. And Donald Trump has been so far the only candidate that I can imagine being able to restore that pride in America that's been,
Well, that's what his slogan on the logo says, making America great again. We'd all like to see that. We want to make America great. We don't want to be responsible for the rest of the world. Now, the Pope's comment, like that Hillary commercial, appears to be pandering to the illegal immigrants who are overwhelmingly Catholic in their religious faith. But again, why are they addressing the illegal immigrants in a campaign year when illegal immigrants are not supposed to be allowed to vote?
Well, I got to say one last one. I know you got to get going, but I don't know if you've ever heard of Father Malachi Martin. He's a Vatican insider. He passed away several years ago, and he has several books concerning how the Vatican's basically been co-opted by the New World Order and elites like that in order to just make the religion itself no longer adherent to what it's supposed to stand for and become an agent of this, one world system that encourages open borders and banking elites that have come through the Vatican Bank. And I encourage your readers or your listeners to look up the book Windswept House. It basically speaks to why the Pope, who is in charge now, is going out of his way to even divide Catholics amongst themselves and make them choose, because it's got nothing to do with the religion anymore. It's got everything to do with this agenda to basically get rid of national sovereignty and make us all.
Oh yeah, you offer the clergy enough money and enough little boys, and they'll basically get up there and sell whatever the agenda is. And religion has always been the tool of the state to keep the population under control, to keep them from rising up and murdering the nobility. And there's nothing new in that. This is just an updated version. Anyway, listen, I got to let you go. We're almost to the end of the show. We're going to close the phone lines. And speaking of immigrants, President Erdogan, when he's not sending troops into Iraq and Syria, is out there saying the West has no chance of stopping the refugee influx. Remember, earlier in the week, he was saying, give me more money or I will send the refugees to Europe. And apparently he didn't get his money. And now he's saying, well, I'm sending the refugees your way. You can't possibly stop it. Now, Europe is starting to pull together and say it's time to close the borders. They're closing the Balkan refugee route. That's creating more diplomatic stresses across the region. But all the EU nations that are on the outside of the European Union, they're all getting together and say, Schengen has to go. We have to put up the borders. We cannot absorb all these people. Now, Russia appears to be having a much less problem with the refugees because they didn't have open borders. And they're only letting in the people they think are going to be a benefit to their society. Now, there's been another embarrassment in the pro-immigrant propaganda. There was this picture floating around showing immigrants bobbing in the ocean in life jackets. Their boat had sunk. They were on the verge of drowning. You should feel sorry for them. And the uncropped version of the picture came out, and it shows a crewman, as in camera crewman, not ship crewman, standing in the water. It's only ankle deep. This was a staged shot. They set it up to come up with a picture to make you feel so sorry for all those struggling immigrants. It's amazing. Apparently, having become victorious in Oregon, the U.S. government is on more land grabs up in Alaska. The United States, the Bureau of Land Management and the Forestry Service are up there grabbing refuge lands and blocking them off and setting them up and saying these are now under federal government control. And it's riled the hunters and trappers up there who are dependent on that for their livelihoods. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we are getting a report that Israel has launched rocket attacks against military checkpoints in Syria near Damascus. So the war is well and truly on at this point, apparently. All right, before we went to the commercial break, we're talking about the United States Fish and Wildlife Service has gone into Alaska and started to say, we are now in control of this, we will administer it. You, the public, are not allowed to make any choices anymore about these lands. Now, this is a little serious. It probably have seen all these reality shows, Life Below Zero, Alaska Sheriff, whatever. These are people who are more connected to the land and living off the land than is the norm down here in the lower 48. And they're used to just traveling over the public lands, hunting and trapping, to live on. But of course, if they're traveling over the public land, hunting and trapping, then they're not going down to the supermarket and spending their money and making a corporation rich. So this appears to be the opening salvo of the government going into Alaska and saying, we're going to take it over and manage it, and you have to get out. And I'm sure the environmentalists are going to say, oh, but see, they will manage the lands wonderfully, and they will just do such a great job. And the reply to that is in Michael Crichton's book, State of Fear, which is where he took on the global warming hoaxers. And in the middle of the book, there's a character who comes in to talk about the mismanagement of Yellowstone National Park. And it does feel like it got dropped in there. And it did, because it's actually one of Michael Crichton's speeches, where he went on out there and he said, here you have the history of Yellowstone National Park. And if you go there and you visit it, it looks beautiful, but it is not in its natural state. It is as carefully manicured as anything you're going to see at the Disney parks. It's not in its natural state. And he goes down the history of all the decisions that were made that resulted in disaster through systems into chaos, getting rid of the wolves, and then all of a sudden there was an overabundance of deer and elk that ate the plants down to the ground, and that in turn resulted in mass starvation the next spring. And there are no evil corporations you could blame that on. These were decisions that were made by supposed experts in nature management with the very best of motives, and they still led to disaster. And the same thing has happened on all these lands that are being grabbed by the federal government. This is a federal government that thought sending in tanks to New Orleans was the appropriate response to Hurricane Katrina. They don't know how to actually deal with the natural world. Look at what happened to the Gulf of Mexico as one example. This is just another land grab. It's part of the Agenda 21 protocols that you are not allowed to be out in nature anymore. You will be confined to a human ranch called a city where your labor can be harvested and you will be breeding the next generation of soldiers and workers, and that will be your life. Only the 1%ers will be allowed to go out into nature. And by the way, it's rather amazing how many places that you can go that are supposed, blocked off from the public land by the Bureau of Land Management, and yet there's a little exception, and you'll find a very expensive luxury resort in the middle of this supposed set-aside piece of land that the public can't go on. And you can't unless you can afford the very high expense of going to these resorts. There's one of them near Sedona, Arizona, called Enchanted Resort. It's right in the middle of a national preserve. And the border of the national preserve comes down to the road, follows the road, goes around the resort, comes right back down. The elites still get to enjoy all of this because, after all, they're elite and they can appreciate the beauty of nature. You farm animals, you stay on the farm and you will work and you will be harvested and you will breed the next generation of workers and soldiers. So there's a lot of anger up in Alaska, and it's being exacerbated by the fact that all of the meetings about these changes, the public are being kept out. We don't care what you have to say. We are deciding what's best. It's a repetition of a phenomenon called the true believer. And it seems to be an illness that infects people who work for the government at any level, where they just have this unshakable belief that they serve a higher purpose, and because of that, they don't need to pay attention to the laws. They don't need to listen to the public. They know what's best. I think one of the most egregious examples of that was Henry Kissinger when he justified the overthrow of the elected government of Chile by saying that the issues were simply too important to allow the Chilean people to decide for themselves. That was his mindset. I know what's best for Chile, ahead of the Chilean people. So they kicked out Allende, they installed the dictator Pinochet, and actually life for the Chilean people went pretty bad. So, now, the latest stage in the constant campaign of booga booga, to keep you afraid, the Department of Homeland Security, realizing that we're all burned out on Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden and ISIS, and we're tuning out. We've heard it so much. Now they're going to rebrand, okay? And the new kind of terrorists that we have to be afraid of are Americans who self-radicalize. These are Americans who stop believing the government, and that makes them dangerous. And basically, that's the new definition of terrorism. Anybody who doubts the word of the government, which right now I think is about 99% of the American population. Certainly applied to George Carlin. He always said, I never believe anything the government says. If you go and you read that Constitution, there's nothing in there that says we the people are obligated to accept the government's word on anything. Nor is there anything in the Constitution that authorizes the government to lie to us. And the 10th Amendment says they can't just decide that they have a right to do that. Every single time the government lies to the people, it delegitimizes itself. Torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, attack on USS Liberty, 9/11, Lusitania and its weapons, Saddam's nuclear bombs, Assad's sarin gas. A government that lies to you is not the legal, legitimate government of this nation. It's an occupying government, ruling us for the benefit of a foreign power, Israel. It's time to wake up and understand that's what's going on. We're a nation under occupation by Israel. Washington, D.C. has been turned into a Vichy government. They're puppet rulers. And there's no reason for us to accept that any more than the Iranians did in 1979, or the people of Libya, or the people of Yemen, or any of these other nations living under puppet rule. We have to take our nation back by whatever means are necessary. We have to make the United States of America serve the American people. Not the New World Order, not Wall Street, not Israel. America for the Americans. What a dangerous, radical, subversive idea that is. All right, we're almost to the end of the show here. I was going to get into Flint's water level, but apparently there's one man in Flint whose blood is carrying 5 times what is considered the toxic level of lead. The doctors are actually saying it's the highest they've ever found, and they can't understand why he's still alive. And Flint has the highest water bills in the nation. Think about that. There's the music. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, with the lovely Lady Claire here on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, make a point of reaching out to people who are not yet on the Internet and start educating them to the real nature of what's going on. Also, WhatReallyHappened.com can always use a few more donations to get the bills paid this month. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.